Hello my friends and welcome back. It's Wednesday my dude, so happy Wednesday, happy hump day. The spine of the week has been broken and I for once cannot wait for Friday to crack open a cold brewski with my bros. Alcohol free of course. Putin arrived in Mongolia. Why is that important? Might sound boring actually, but it is not. The International Criminal Court, the Rome Statute, has been ratified by majority of the Western countries and even all other countries. Majority of the countries in the world have ratified this Rome Statute, meaning that if there is an arrest warrant by the ICC, the International Criminal Court, these countries must arrest the guy who is in the country. Well, Mongolia is part of the ICC and they have ratified the Rome Statute, and there is an arrest warrant in effect by the ICC. So Putin going to Mongolia is a big middle finger to the rules-based order of the world and of the West. It's the big middle finger to the world law, world order, ICC, everything that we stand for here in the West. On this clip you can see Putin walking down the plane. And do you notice something? Me too. I noticed that he's not being arrested, meaning that this is the beginning of the destruction of rules-based order as we know it, unless Ukraine wins. It's quite simple actually. Putin is gambling everything he has to break the system. So far we are letting him. But it's in our power to change that. Also, by the way, why did he go? Because last week Mongolia released its official government 5-year plan, not the communist 5-year plan, just like an agenda, official agenda for the next 5 years. And up until 2030 there was no mention in the country's agenda at all about the pipeline that's supposed to go from Russia to China through Mongolia. Now, this pipeline is incredibly expensive and resource consuming, so Russia needs China and Mongolia to pitch in, otherwise it will never be finished. Now, Mongolia doesn't have it in its 5-year plan or agenda, and 1 week later, Putin flies to Mongolia. This is no small deal. After losing the European markets, Russia is running a huge monetary deficit. Their hope is, Putin's hope is, that China will make up for that. But for that you gotta build out the infrastructure extremely fast and you need Mongolia 100%. Mongolia 1 week ago gave a middle finger to Putin, saying that they won't build it. Now they're giving a middle finger to the ICC and the rules-based order by not arresting Putin. Things are definitely interesting. By the way, this is another video of Putin in Mongolia. Okay, they're handshaking, whatever, boring stuff. But look at those dudes in the back. Damn, Genghis Khan. This is the pride and might of the mighty Mongolian horde. Their feigned retreat and other famous tactics. Damn, I love the look of that. Just Putin. This is not really interesting here, but look at you got the Mongolian horsemen with the dude saluting in the back, a general. Ooh. Okay, yeah, I didn't see that one coming. What the hell? Very strange. Just to hammer that point in, how big of a deal it is that Mongolia did not arrest Putin 2 days ago, I'll read you a thread. When the International Criminal Court of The Hague issued an arrest warrant for Putin, many people spoke of the Putin's fear that he could now be arrested in many countries around the world if he traveled to countries that have ratified the Rome Statute. Of course. However, Putin is the man who destroyed international law with the occupation of Crimea and other Ukrainian regions. The warrant was like a challenge for him to prove that he could ignore not only international law but also international justice. Putin's visit to Mongolia is setting a precedent that should confirm the destruction of the international law system. It is true because everybody will behave as bad as you let them behave. That's the truth of human nature. Rules-based order means there are rules, you break them, there is a collection of countries that will punish you for it. There has always been punishment ever since World War I, World War II. The Cold War, the Soviet Union fell. After that, the West got really lazy and sleepy, and now there are countries rising up who want to break the system, and they're not being punished at all. And by that, the West is sending a message that we allow you to do that. And I don't want to send that message. I'm not sending that message, but unfortunately, the collective West right now is. I would like to remind you that in July 2023, Putin literally forced South African President Cyril Ramaphosa to agree to his visit to the BRICS summit. According to some reports, the Kremlin actually threatened war if Putin was detained in South Africa. However, the almost daily consultations ended with Putin cancelling the trip. So that was the first time he was supposed to go to another country where there was an arrest warrant on his head, but he didn't. Mongolia now is the first one. So the Kremlin has found another country, Mongolia. What will happen after Putin's visit to a country that has signed the Rome Statute when he returns home safely? A dangerous precedent will be set, especially for the countries of the global south. Putin went to Mongolia. No one arrested him there, and everything went well. So maybe we should invite Putin too. As a result, the authority of the ICC will be significantly weakened, which is exactly what Putin is trying to achieve, and which is why he is flying to Mongolia. Well, we are already living in the new world, and it seems that the future of this world, security and values, will be determined in Ukraine, on the battlefield. Only complete and sustainable Ukrainian victory can pave the way to a strong, peaceful and democratic world. I do agree with every word here. It is about these red lines by the West. Putin's arrest warrant is a red line by the West that if he goes to a country, he will be arrested. Basically, it's a ban on him traveling almost. He just gives a middle finger to it, showing that he doesn't care about the Western rules, Western red lines, and that he's not punished for it, which sends the message to every other country that has the same aspirations that they can do what they want because there will be no repercussions. I don't like that. I want to change that. By the way, my friends, if you were wondering what am I wearing, then look at this. With love from Ukraine, there is a Baba Yaga and a Ukrainian flag. Shell dropped on a Russian T-72. It's a beautiful design I'm wearing. And you can buy that actually now. They have been published for a long time, but I really didn't feel like showing them to you. I wanted them to be like a surprise if somebody actually wanders to the webpage. But rehistore.com, if you go here and if you scroll down, you push see all, you can see all of the products. There's Rehi lineup, but there's of course Ukrainian designs which show your mentality. Who do you stand for? What do you fight for? For example, in HIMARS we trust. That's a nice design. I love Ukraine. That's a nice design. And of course, what I'm wearing right now, with love from Ukraine, that has been people's favorite. So go and check it out. Link is in the description below, and get yourself for your grandmother or spouse a little gift. Let them also show what they stand for. We mentioned the Global South before. Well, now the Global South gets a little extra power because Joni Askola brings us another report. Joni Askola being a NAFO analyst from Finland. Turkey applied to join the BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. Of course, now the alliance is bigger. I'll get to it later. But Turkey is in the list of applicants to the European Union. It's a country in NATO. You cannot be in NATO and in European applicant list and then join BRICS. They're completely the opposite sides. Turkey is famous for playing both sides. I'll read you the report. Turkey has officially requested to join the BRICS coalition of ambitious, corrupt and authoritarian emerging market countries in a bid to enhance its global influence and establish new connections beyond its long-standing Western allies. Turkey enjoys playing both sides, as evidenced by its past actions, including the purchase of Russian S-400 air defense systems and the sale of drones to Ukraine while assisting Russia in evading sanctions. Turkey also placed Finland and Sweden in potential danger by employing ineffective negotiation tactics and prolonging our NATO membership process for extended period, ultimately gaining very little from it. Turkey's strategic geographical location provides it with more leverage than it perhaps warrants. Nevertheless, there are limits to everything. Turkey needs to choose a side. If it wishes to align itself with the genocidal regimes of China and Russia, it is free to do so, but it should not remain a member of NATO in that scenario. I do agree. Ukraine has benefited a lot from Turkey, for example, with the Bayraktars at the first year of war, but it has also suffered a lot because Turkey is helping Russia evade sanctions and they're buying Russian weaponry. Not anymore, but they used to. European Union has not accepted Turkey as a member. BRICS will accept almost anybody because they're desperate. So if they officially accept them, then Turkey is a member of NATO and is a member of BRICS, which are completely on the opposite sides. Turkey is very clearly and publicly playing the both sides. I think that should not go unpunished. BRICS is an abbreviation of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. Earlier this year, Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa were joined by 4 new members. And check out these countries. What do you think about them? Iran, United Arab Emirates, Ethiopia and Egypt. Saudi Arabia was invited to join, but has not yet done so. We see beneath our eyes the formation of a new geopolitical power structure of the future world. The old after World War rules-based order is being demolished. We can't stop it. The Western countries can. They have chosen not to. It's a political decision. The West has all the weapons necessary to defeat Russia on the battlefield in Ukraine. They have all the weapons necessary to do it tomorrow. They have chosen not to, unfortunately. I'm not here blaming the West, the collective West. After all, I am part of the collective West. I am just trying to guide the attention to that we have the capabilities, but our politicians have right now chosen not to give them to Ukraine. Not to allow Ukraine to use the F-16's full potential, not to send more Storm Shadows, not to send the Taurus missiles and the JASSM missiles of USA. We'll get to it. Now we'll go to Belarus, where Lukashenko is, I don't know if he's forced by Putin or if he's playing around, but he is maneuvering his tanks to the Ukrainian border. T-72B tanks from Belarus, 6th Guards, Kyiv, Berlin, mechanized brigade, seen arriving by train, reportedly along the Ukrainian border. I still think Lucky is not going to attack, but he's trying to divert some Ukrainian resources. 1D checkers. Yeah, if you talk about 3D chess, then Lukashenko definitely is on 1D checkers levels. Well, Luka will never invade Ukraine, I don't think so. It doesn't have the capabilities, it doesn't have the courage to do so. Also, Ukrainian army would demolish Belarus, and if they would, Poland would have something to say about it. And Lukashenko is really afraid of Polish military, as they should. The thing is, if you do maneuver your outdated, obsolete military to Ukrainian border, it still forces Ukraine to divert resources, units to the Belarusian border. Even though you know that it won't invade, you have to do so, otherwise you might as well invite them to invade. So unfortunately, it does benefit Putin by diverting Ukrainian forces, if not away from the front, then away from the reserves. So it is bad news for Ukraine. Let's look at some sheer statistics. In August, Russia expanded its control in Ukraine by approximately 350 square kilometers, marking the largest monthly gain for Russia since August 2022. So in 2 years, this August now that just ended, was the largest territorial gain for Russia, 350 square kilometers. Now, it's a very small area compared to the 1,000 kilometers long front line. However, Ukraine crossed into Russia, seizing control of approximately 770 square kilometers, an area equivalent to all Russian advances since the end of April. So, I know people like to measure territory taken or territory occupied. it doesn't mean much. If we're talking about hundreds of square kilometers, unless we talk about tens of thousands of square kilometers, it doesn't mean much. What means is the losses and offensive capabilities destroyed or deployed, reserves wasted, resources wasted. That matters a lot. Ammunition wasted, that matters, not territory. Territory begins to matter if it's strategically in a very important location or if it's very big territory, which we haven't seen for a very long time. My friends, look at this. This is a Russian glide bomb. It's released, it deploys its wings, turns itself around, and now just glides. Now this is the new version of Russian Fab 500, so one of the smallest glide bombs. Already looks like a beast, unfortunately. This now can glide 70 to 85 kilometers. Before it was 50 to 60. So they have increased the range. Glide bombs have unfortunately proved to be one of Russia's most efficient weapon against the Ukrainians. And they can be used for one reason. Because the Western powers have not allowed Ukraine to destroy Russian glide bomb deploying capabilities. It's a stupid sentence, but check this out. You cannot shoot down the glide bombs. It's pointless. You can shoot down the planes, but that's also like destroying the arrow. The point is, Russia keeps their planes on the ground, on plain sight. Plain sight. But they do, because they're Russians, they always do, they don't care. Ukraine could destroy these planes on the ground or the runways, but Ukraine even has the capabilities to do so, Western capabilities. They are now developing their own, it takes a bit more time when they have them in mass. Western capabilities are already there, but they cannot do that because they're not allowed to do that. Storm Shadows cannot be used for this, HIMARS cannot be used for this, and that's it. Those two weapon systems are in Ukraine. They could destroy the planes and the runways that enable these glide bombs to destroy Ukrainian positions and Ukrainian troops. But the Western countries don't have the political will to make that decision yet. Again, I don't want to accuse anybody. I don't want to create conflict on this. I want us to unite behind this cause of allowing Ukraine to use these weapons. So if you feel attacked, please don't. We're on the same side. I'm guiding attention to the biggest issue. It's not more weapons, it's the weapons that are in Ukraine, that we must allow Ukraine to use them. On Russian soil, everywhere. That's the point. Now, my friends, check out this. If you're 60, 70 years old and you fought in the United States military, then I guess you remember this weapon because it is a Soviet Union artillery that was the design started in 46 and they started deploying them in the 50s. So if you studied the enemy's artillery systems, you have studied these photos if you're like 60, 70. By the way, if you are 60, 70, thank you for watching my videos. I'm honored. But the point here is that in 2024, right now actually, more proof that Russian army, second army in the world, is scraping the barrel for weapons and people. Another example of the Russians deploying Soviet-era M46 130mm towed guns was spotted on the way to the front. The M46 was ordered and began designed in 1946, so we're talking about 3 generations ago, 78 years old. This means that in 2024, Russian forces are fighting with the same weapons their great-grandfathers were trained on. For context, that would be the equivalent to the United States having fought the Vietnam War with weapons from World War I. Wow. I do want to read you the comments because it's great points down here. The M250 cal machine gun was designed in 1918 and is still used by the United States Army. Old doesn't necessarily mean ineffective. I do love the answer to that because check it out. The United States Army is not using M2s from 1918, but new and improved ones. That gun literally from 1949 and has fired thousands of rounds. If it was a 1990 manufactured and updated version of the gun with modern sights, metallurgy and ammunition, then you would be correct. They will have to use 60 to 70-year-old 130mm ammunition, which the Russian Federation does not manufacture anymore. The only reason someone would field a gun like that is because it is all they have left and they could care less about it exploding in the face of the crew. That is a real possibility, and it does happen in the Russian army quite often. Now, just to not leave this news very one-sided, here are photos of Ukrainian Territorial Defense Forces using a Maxim from World War I, M1910, medium machine gun team from Ukrainian Territorial Defense, August 2024. And look at this beauty. This Maxim machine gun still fires, has ammunition. The fire rate is not very fast, but if you hit somebody with it, they will probably die. The point here is that this Maxim, we have seen photos of it being used by the Russians and by the Ukrainians. This is a very rare case, and if there's any scene, people will take pictures of it immediately. These guns from the Russian Federation, the artillery, they're being transported to the front by hundreds, taken out of old warehouses. You can be sure these Maxims are not being taken out of old warehouses. These are few of the systems that still work and they use them, but in Russian case, they deploy massively 40s, 50s and 60s weapons on the battlefield. I see a difference here. Let me know in the comments if you do also. Talking about strange weapon systems, this is a BMW 5 Series, and in the back there is mounted 122mm Grad Systems barrels, GMLRS. It's in use by the Ukrainians, and damn, this is a, how do you call, rear axle, how do you call this in English when the rear wheels are only turning so you can drift around with it? This BMW is a drifting machine, but it's a GLMRS at the same time. Imagine you can drift around and at the same time the missiles go out. Of course, it's very ineffective, but it's cool. You get the cool points. Now, my friends, I'll bring to you something that was a secret for at least a year. I was connected to development of this system, but that was almost a year ago. And now photos of it have been emerging, so I'm guessing it's not a secret anymore if I see photos of it online. So I don't have to worry about OPSEC and I can talk about it. This is a public source, not my private one. Meet the Ukrainian designed and produced Aero Azimuth. Aero Azimuth is a balloon-mounted radio triangulation system that uses 2 or more directional receivers to locate EMF source such as Russian UAV control centers. So pretty much they locate, geo-triangulate Russian hotspots that radiate out, not heat, but the way, well, radiating hotspots. That's what I mean. My language barrier is an issue here. This is what it looks like. It's a big balloon. You can't really shoot them down if you're a Russian. So, I mean, what you can do is use a cheap kamikaze drone to shoot it down, or try to shoot it down with a machine gun if you see it, but they're usually very high up where the kamikaze drones don't fly and you cannot see it to shoot it down with a machine gun. Shooting it down with an S-300 or Panzer S is a potential possibility, but it's a huge waste because Ukraine that can deploy them by tens or by the hundreds, but if Russians do shoot it down with Panzer S or S-300, it's a huge win for Ukrainians because they just wasted one missile for the Russians. If they don't shoot it down, it's a still huge win for the Ukrainians because they can pinpoint the radar systems. So this is a very cheap, cost-effective weapon to pinpoint Russian electronic warfare systems of any sort, counter battery artillery radars, for example. The purge in the Russian Ministry of Defense continues. Major General Valery Muminyanov, in Estonia and in Finland, where they originate from Finland, of course, but Mumi, the white, weird, fluffy beasts, Mumi. They are cute and everybody watched them when they were kids. Where this is Valery Muminyanov, Deputy Commander of the Leningrad Military District in charge of logistics, was arrested for bribery. It is funny. I'll tell you two truths of the Russian Ministry of Defense that have been true ever since the start of the Soviet Union. Everybody in the higher structure of Russian hierarchy in the army steals and takes bribes. Everybody. If you don't, you cannot be part of the system. That is the system. If you don't, you are a threat to those who do take bribes. And if they see you not taking bribes, they immediately think, oh my God, are you going to rat on us? since you're not part of us. So you do have to, the system kind of forces you to take bribes and be like that. It is the system. Secondly, since everybody does it, if you see anybody being arrested or charged for corruption or taking bribes or stealing, then this is not actually fixing the corruption in Russia, because the system is corruption. This is a power struggle. Just power, people playing around positions, higher ups. Because the more friends you have at the system, the more powerful you are. And this is top guys fighting for power, changing up their friends. This guy gets arrested, he's probably connected with Gerasimov or Shoigu in some way, because they're being phased out. My friends, yesterday in the Ukrainian town of Poltava, a Russian missile hit a university and a hospital. By now there is information about 47 Ukrainian civilian casualties dead, and 207 are injured, with the majority of them being under the rubble. This is one of the most devastating single Russian missile hit of the war. And in that light, I want to bring you some information about how I see that all of Russian citizens living right now in Russia are collectively responsible for this missile hit and responsible for the deaths of each and every one of those Ukrainian civilians. Some of them are children. 50 million Russians are working daily to murder Ukrainians. This amount of Russians are directly responsible for the genocide of Ukrainians. This is the amount of people working directly or indirectly connected to the Russian Ministry of Defense, or producing weapons, or producing any kind of chips or systems that go to the weapons. That's a big amount of people. 86% of the Russians support the war and genocide of the Ukrainians. That's according to polls inside Russia. And 99.99% of Russians are doing absolutely nothing to stop this war and genocide of Ukrainians. They are all responsible for this war. I know some of you think differently and feel empathy, that, oh, there are people, they cannot do much, they're victims. I don't feel this way, my friends. I, of course, respect your opinion, and you can feel differently. We can have different opinions. I see that all of Russian citizens who right now live in Russia and go to work and do nothing about Putin being in power and about this war, in my eyes, they are responsible for every death in Ukraine. That's how I see it. Now I'll bring you an example of a great Western NATO country and how other NATO countries should react to these attacks in Ukraine. The Romanian Senate has approved the donation of the Patriot air defense system to Ukraine. It was handed over to the country's parliament for an urgent vote. Thus, back in June, Romania announced the transfer of Patriots to Ukraine. However, before the start of the transfer process, official Bucharest appealed to its allies to provide the country with similar system. There are air defense systems in Europe that Europe will not need for the next long time, because Russian missile capabilities and drone capabilities are being destroyed in Ukraine. Russia cannot attack the West with missiles and drones for a long time. I don't think they even will ever. So these air defense systems should go to Ukraine, and the weapon systems already in Ukraine should lose all the restrictions by the West. Operator Starsky brings us a very great photo from history. That is what I would call the price of appeasement. Chamberlain did it to Hitler, and we, the collective West, the politicians putting restrictions on weapons in Ukraine, they're doing it to Putin. This is nothing more than appeasement. This is nothing more than Chamberlainian politics. Hitler has not attacked us. Why attack Hitler? Arm Britain and prolong the war. Why not peace with Hitler? Europe for Europeans, America for Americans. These are posters on the street. Right now I would call this Russian propaganda. Back then you could call this German propaganda. This is isolationist politics, and it has never worked with dictators because they gain their strength from good people doing nothing. And just to illustrate to you a point that some Westerners have forgotten and Russians just don't want to admit. On this photo, you can see Western trucks, United States, French and British trucks. But that's the Soviet Union. a large number of military trucks stored near Moscow in 1944. They had all just been donated to the Soviet Union by the United States. The United States gave Lend-Lease millions, hundreds of millions of tons of food, hundreds of thousands of trucks, motorcycles, tanks, everything. The Soviet Union did not win the Second World War. The Western powers won the Second World War because, first of all, the Western Front, and second of all, the Eastern Front was filled. Almost a majority was filled with Western tech, Western logistics, trains even. United States gave mind-boggling amount of aid to the Soviet Union. Without that aid, the Soviet Union would have collapsed under the Third Reich's army's onslaught. That's what I believe in, that's the historical fact, and people have forgotten about that. The biggest historical myth is because Soviet Union lost the most amount of people that they won the Second World War, but the Soviet Union lost so many people because of Stalin, because of his policies. He is behind that, such great losses. Now, my friends, let's look at the JASSM missile. Finland is going to receive a new bunch of these JASSM missiles, and they are all going to be in Finland, which means Moscow is in range, which means if Moscow tries anything on the European eastern border, these JASSM missiles will fly to St. Petersburg and Moscow. United States may transfer long-range JASSM missiles to Ukraine. A decision is expected in the fall. And you can see the range of these missiles. Moscow is not in the range from Ukraine, but majority of the airfields, for example, that Russia uses to bombard Ukraine are. So there is no point in transferring these JASSM missiles to Ukraine if there is any restriction, because it is an efficient, stealth, precise, mid-range to long-range missile system from the West. So why transfer this missile if you don't allow Ukrainians to use them? So transferring this missile makes sense only if you allow Ukrainians to use this extremely expensive system to its full effect. Otherwise you waste the money. So I am expecting the United States to remove restrictions from this system if they do transfer it. And that would change a lot. It is the weirdest fact that there are already, I've said it, yeah, but there are already weapons in Ukraine, Western weapons in Ukraine that could do so much damage to the Russians. But there are restrictions. Western restrictions don't allow Ukraine to use these weapons. It's not about, oh, we don't have enough. They have the weapons. They cannot fire them. They can fire them in Ukrainian territory, in occupied territories, but the real targets are in Russia right now. Now, my friends, it's a hump day, so I'll butcher some hump day, buy me a coffee, monthly members. These are the guys who allow me to do what I do, and I'm very thankful for you. Granny USA, kimbaljohansson@twitter.com, tennisk.adcock, Tale Maruskak, Robert Josef Senvik. Damn, your name. Thank you for having such weird and unpronounceable names and signing up to monthly members. You guys allow me to do what I do. Until my next video, my friends, which will be on Friday, so be sure to be back. Slava Ukraini, and bye bye.